All right, as promised, let's have this conversation now. Food insecurity is a complex issue. Now, as the world marks TB Day, some of the patients struggle to finish treatment, for example, because they cannot access food to eat. Is it an issue of not enough food being produced, or is it distribution, or is it the cost of food? And then there's the issue of food wastage. When you look at the research that's conducted by the Human Sciences Research Council, it seems that the level of food insecurity differs when you look at the Gauteng province, for example, according to districts. The West Rand district, Sedibeng, city of Johannesburg, Ekurhuleni are some of those impacted. And let's talk about this further now. We've got the Gauteng Agriculture and Rural Development MEC with us, Vuyiswa Ramokgopa, who is with us in studio here, as well as via our video link. We've got Professor Thokozani Smelane from the Human Sciences Research Council. Good evening to you both. Let me welcome you to the show.
Good evening.
MEC, you look at the numbers, they're staggering, and we've been talking about this issue of food insecurity for a very long time now. And one wonders, when you still, in 2025, talk of households that go to bed hungry, you still look at households, for example, that some people eat once or twice a day. It's 2025. How does that make you feel?
I mean, it's a devastating reality that we face, particularly in a province like Gauteng, that is the economic engine of our country, and that is known for even producing and exporting food to other countries. You know, the idea that South Africa is one of the top agricultural and food producing countries in the world, and we export to feed children in other countries, and yet ours here, 1 in 5 children in our country go to bed hungry, and moreover suffer from stunting. You know, children under the age of 6 have issues of stunting, and that has a knock-on effect on a number of other issues, early childhood development, health issues, and just general developmental issues. So it's a figure that, you know, we need to move beyond the numbers and just talking about food insecurity and discuss the systemic failures that actually bring this situation to the fore. And I think that's where the conversation needs to go. You know, it's not about simply saying people don't have food. We have to go to the next stage to say, why don't they have food? You know, and there are a number of reasons. And
I want us to talk about that in just a moment. Let me bring Prof in. Prof, good evening to you. Thank you so much for your time. When one goes through the research that has been conducted, particularly on the province of Gauteng, you look at the different districts and there's a number of issues, but I wonder what's behind these numbers. Is it an issue of distribution? Is it an issue of the cost of food? What exactly is at play here as you're conducting the research and discovering?
Greetings to you, Ongewe, and greetings to the MEC and to the listeners and the viewers at home. Ongewe, as you have indicated and putting forward the consideration for the variation in the numbers, where there are pockets or existence of pockets of food insecurity. But before I can be able to go deeper into our findings and the survey that we have conducted, I would like to indicate the reality and the fact that the food insecurity which the province is experiencing is in fact a derivative of the socio-economic transformation that has taken place in the province within the past 30 years. I'm sure we'll all recall that the province of Gauteng, among all other provinces, prior to 1994, was the one that has the highest level of attractiveness, attracting people within the country as well as also from the neighboring countries, because there was the hope that when you come to Gauteng, you will get a job, you will work and get money and take that money back home. The difference, however, was on the fact that people who were attracted to the province of Gauteng were not staying permanently. So there was that outflow of people without any stable household permanently living in the Gauteng. Come 1994, and then what happened was that an open gate, and the Gauteng saw an influx of people who then have to come and stay permanently in the province. And we have seen the drastic shift and the change that took place in the inner cities, because the inner cities were the only areas, particularly for people who were coming, not necessarily within the borders of South Africa, but also across the continent now.
Yeah.
So that on its own brought a drastic shift in terms of food demand at a household level. So I want to bring that a change that has taken place, because with these communities coming and settling permanently in the cities or the towns of how most of the towns in the province of Gauteng, they were not producing their own food. So that's where we started.
Pardon me, Prof, because that point that you're making, I don't want to lose it. It's quite an important one before we even move into another conversation. MEC, I'm going to bring this to you because this is quite an important conversation, because it not only impacts food insecurity, but we also speak about it when we're talking about resources, when we're talking about the distribution of, water, health systems and all of that.
Yeah.
But how do you begin to contend with what you are now dealing with at face value in order to be able to ensure that this issue is actually addressed? Because you're saying that let's move the conversation from diagnosing the problem to now towards what can be done.
Yeah, so Bongiwe, I mean, I think there's aspects of what the Prof is raising that are very important to note and are absolutely true. Gauteng has experienced a massive population growth. From 2021, we grew by 3 million people, which is really significant. From 11 million to, I think, 14 million or 15 million is where we are now. Sorry, 12 to 15 million. So that's quite significant as a starting point. But really, if we have to get to the nub of the issue is really about affordability. One of the key things that has happened in the last 10 years is a rising unemployment rate. Fewer people work. 1 rand that is earned in a household has to feed more mouths in a household. And it doesn't matter where you are in the province. If you have, 500 rand to feed 7 members of your family, it doesn't go very far. So you have a situation where people have to choose between, do I buy food? Do I feed my children? Or do I eat myself? Do I buy food? Or do I spend money on transport or send my children to school? And these are just untenable choices that the residents of Gauteng have to make. And it is indeed a metropolitan problem. It's something that becomes a lot more prevalent in the metros. One, because there's a lot less land for agricultural purposes. People are not growing their own food to the same extent as they would in some of the rural areas. But secondly, as I say, it's very much about affordability. And the concentration of the industry of food. So if you want to access any food, you're going to have to walk into a supermarket or a spaza shop or some kind of formalized retailer, or hopefully buy from an informal retailer in your neighborhood. Now, we have to be able to assess what are those key drivers of the price of food. The price of food is it's unregulated, largely in South Africa. So you can have a situation where a core item like a tomato can go from being 5 rand today to being 15 rand in a space of 12 months. And those are some of the things we have to look at. You speak also about food waste. We actually produce enough food, ironically. We actually produce enough, but we waste close to 10 million tons of food a year in this country. Food that just gets thrown away, put in landfills, not because it's gone bad, but because it is just not profitable to get it to where it needs to go. And there's something that is really broken in that system, and we have to now look at the entire value chain and the food economy to understand the ways in which we can make it more effective and get food where it needs to be. And
Prof, we speak about, of course, this issue of the number of people that you speak about, the changing demographics, of course, Gauteng being attractive and all of that. But from the research that you've conducted, is there a relationship when you look at the, between the households as well as their food security status with economic factors and some of the demographics? What are we seeing on that front?
Certainly, we in our survey, which was a national survey in actual fact, where we have to draw comparisons across 9 provinces of South Africa, using closer to 100 indicators that we will have to evaluate. But for each and every province, we produced its own report where we were drawing comparison across the districts. So as the MSC has indicated, that But the bigger challenge in across the country now is access to food. Not necessarily the availability of food, because South Africa is known to be food secure. Now, within the province of Gauteng, the primary determinant of access to food is income. Mm-hmm. This income, which has been dwindling over years because of the lack of economic activities, because of the shrinkage of industrial activities in the province, as what the province used to be known for. Mm. So that is the biggest problem that now make the household to gamble between the two choices. Should I have to keep this money to buy food? Should I have to keep this money to send my children to school? So indeed, we were able to find that correlation. Hence, now, with the decline in the industrial activities and also the shrinking in the household income, we find that the main source of income are the social grants that now tend to cushion the household from extreme hunger and a lack of food. So that finding, it is across all 9 provinces where the major source of income for household are the social grants. And then these social grants are not enough. Therefore, in a realistic situation, what should happen is that households have to supplement their meager income by producing their own food. So there is a unique characteristics for Gauteng. The land is not available enough for household to produce their own food. The land that is available for household, most of it is used for household, to build household or for settlement. This is the case with Soweto. If you go to Soweto, if you go to most township in Alexandra within Gauteng.
And that is a problem I will even say I'm facing, because in some of the instances you want to grow just a bit of a garden. You don't even have space. And I'm sure a lot of the viewers can relate to that. How then are you beginning to address this issue? Because this is something that will fall within your purview. Yeah. And we just want to know, how then can we at least move towards ensuring that we can grow our own food?
Look, there are a number of things. It has to be a multi-pronged, multi-sectoral approach, to be honest. We have invested extensively in supporting subsistence farmers and household food gardens. We supported about 9,000 subsistence farmers and about 13,000 backyard gardens last year alone. But Bongiwe, it's not enough, because a person doesn't live on just cabbage, spinach that you grow from your garden. You still need to be able to have your pap, your mealie meal, your proteins, your eggs, your meats, whatever it may be. So the nutritional balance that's required cannot be grown solely from a garden. However, we are making a lot of those investments. There must be an approach wherein, civil society organizations, there's a lot of NPOs that are working in the food security space, but a lot of that work is uncoordinated. We don't know. Millions are being poured into food security, but you don't know where that money ends up, and is it actually going to the people who need it the most? And then lastly, I think there must be definitely more data. And I think the work that Prof and academics like himself are doing is really important, because you can't solve the problem if you don't know where it is.
That's true.
And if you don't know to what extent and the nature of the problem. So it's very important for us to understand what are we talking about here? What Prof spoke about household income. The social grant absolutely isn't enough. But a basket of food for a family of 4 has been calculated, and it's been published, this number. It's about 5,500 rand to feed a family of 4
and
a full diet. Now, how many people in this country can say they spend 5,500 rand on food? Very few. So already that tells us there must be a targeted intervention. And one of the things that we are actually calling for is we're saying we need to have legislative change. We need to actually look at our social welfare and social support package. Why do we've got grants for everything. We should actually have potentially introduce a food voucher, a food grant that people can use specifically to go and buy food. and not have to use a social grant and decide, do I buy school shoes or toiletries or food or transport or what?
Sure.
So these are a number of interventions, and I think it is going to take time, but it requires a multi-set of stakeholders to come together to solve this problem.
And Prof, one wonders, with the extreme weather patterns that we are also seeing, is the research telling you anything at all as far as the impact that it's having on food production?
Certainly, Bongo, but in the presence of the MEC, I would like to make you guys to laugh on something that we are underestimating, particularly for Gauteng. We are talking about households. And the provinces that has a higher level of attractiveness, like Gauteng, end up having homeless people, higher population of homeless people. And when we talk of household and the hunger in the household. Hence, we neglect this population that is increasing yearly of homeless people. This is despite the fact that the Constitution of South Africa guarantees that every citizen will have access to sufficient food. Where do we leave these people? In terms of planning and also attempting to provide food for them. These are the problems for provinces like Western Cape, Gauteng, KwaZulu-Natal, and so that have the bigger cities, because there is this increasing number of homelessness that end up being linked to crime. We need to look at that and infuse that investigation into the studies that we are conducting, not assuming that when we solve problem in the household, the homeless people will be catered for. In South Africa, there is absolutely no program that intends to make sure that homeless people don't go to wherever they sleep on an empty stomach. Having said that, the issues of climate change, of course, is one of the components that we investigated in the survey, where we have to check whether people have access to water, and if they have access to water, where do they get it? And then largely, probably maybe in the provinces that have a larger rural population, they did actually mention one of the hindrances for them to be able to produce their own food was the availability of water and the high levels of unpredictability of the climate. They don't know when is the planting season, whether they will, what they have to plant. So there's been a very much drastic shift in the weather patterns, which is affecting the food security at a household level directly.
Let me thank you both for your time. We haven't even scratched the surface of this conversation because there's still a lot to talk about. But thank you so much for just getting us started on this conversation, because it's one thing to discuss the issue of food insecurity, but the factors, the multiple factors that are underlying this issue, certainly there's quite a number of them. But this is just the beginning of this conversation. That's the Gauteng Agriculture and Rural Development MEC Vuyiswa Ramokgopa, as well as Professor Thokozani Smelane from the Human Sciences Research Council.